Now let's talk about cameras. So first go ahead and place your camera so that you are zooming in to your Lurks character. Move it here. Okay, that's good. Click on your main camera here, and these guidelines here shows what the camera sees, which is what's gonna be rendered in your game view. Now after clicking on main camera, come to the inspector window. So here the clear flags tells camera what to do with the area of zero information. So if you change this to solid color, here area with zero information, you can see it here, will be set to this color here, and you can change the color. If you see this, you can change the color right here. Close it, change it back to skybox. The culling mask here lets you decide which layers your camera should ignore. So if you see here, it's rendering each and every layer. Now go ahead and duplicate your LURPs and just move it around. So you have 3 LURPs character here. Just add 2 of them to your layer, ignore layer, which we created. It's asking, okay, change this property for the child as well, and do this for 2 of your LURPs character. Now go back to your main camera and culling mask and unselect this ignore layer, and you will see that whatever game objects that are added to that layer you are not visible in your game view. Now delete these 2 LURPs, delete this as well. Go back to your main camera. Okay, the projection here, again this is same as the scene view, but here this will be for the game view. So if you set it to orthographic, everything will be at the same distance from the camera, and you won't see any perspective calculated here. And here the size is the orthographic size, so you can set it, change it, and you can see how far you want your camera to be viewed from. So if you set it back to 2, you see you are zoomed in, and you set it back to 100, you are zoomed out. In the clipping planes you see here, the near one, this is the distance from camera at which the things will be rendered. So if you set, okay, we just change it back to perspective. Okay, so this is the distance from camera at which the things will be rendered. So if you set it to very far and click on enter, set it back to set it to 15, and you see the objects won't start rendering until they are 15 meters away from the camera. So this is not what you want. Set it back to the value that makes sense. Set it back to 0.3, which is default. Okay, the far view, this is the distance at which things the things will stop rendering. So if you lower it down, you will see nothing past that point will be rendered. Lower it to some 400, lower it much lesser, 300, no, lower it to 100. You see nothing past 100 meter is rendered over there. The normalized viewport rectangle is the bounds and position in relation to the screen. So if you see, the X and Y, these are set to 0 0, which is right here at the top left corner, 0 pixels from the left and 0 pixel from the right. Now just set this to, if you change this to 0.5, the camera will start rendering from here, that's 0.5. And if you change this also to some 0.2, you see it's with relation to the screen, and width and height, those are 1, and that means it will fill up the entire screen of the game view and entire height of the game view. If change this back to 0 and change this back to both of them to 0, now change this to 0.5, and you see only the half of the width will be rendered, and if I change height to 0.5, then half of the height will be rendered. So change this back to 1 and this also to 1. The depth here, it refers to the order of the camera. So if you have more than one camera, you get to choose which one is on the top. So I'm just gonna duplicate this camera here, and we have another camera, and set the depth to 1 and change these values to a smaller value, no, not that small, set it to 0.5 and 0.5, no, change this to 0.3 and 0.3, 0.3 and 0.3. Now you see it created another view here which can act as your mini map in a game, and you can decide what's gonna be there in your mini map. Okay, just delete this camera. Okay, this field of view here decides how wide or narrow angle your camera has. So that's how much of your world is fitting in one frame. I'm gonna increase it here so your angle gets wider and wider, and if I'm gonna decrease it, your angle gets narrow. This here mimics the function of a telephoto zoom lens in a camera. So if you want a sniper scope or something, you can switch to a lower field of view to look like a zoom camera, this, or you can have something like you can add other camera and then you can have a lower field of view in that camera, and this camera has the same field of view. So in that way you can create mini maps and radars. Another cool thing that you can do with your camera is there are some scripts that are shipped with Unity, located right here in component and camera control. First I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate this camera and then add this. Okay, just change these values right here, 0.3, 0.3. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and add a game object, sphere, and zoom in. I'm gonna move it up here. Okay, move it close to your camera. Okay, now so this is the sphere. Great. Now let's add that component to our camera. Go to component, camera control, and add a smooth look at to your second camera that we duplicated, and this adds a little component to our camera. You see there is an empty slot here that says none transform. I'm gonna drag our sphere game object from the hierarchy window to this target property here. Now when you press play button, you'll see that the second camera, it goes from its initial position to a sphere. Requires no coding at all. The folks at Unity did it for you. That's kind of cool. Just go ahead and add, click on your sphere and add the physics and rigid body component. So now when you click play, your okay, click, make sure the use gravity here is ticked on. So okay, then go ahead and change this material here to bouncy. Okay, now when you press play, we'll see that the camera here will look at the object, and we'll see more about physics and the rigid body component later. Okay, all the way when we simulated our game, you will see a warning right here, and you click on it, the console window will pop up and it will give you detail about that one. It says there are 2 audio listeners in the scene. Please ensure that there is always exactly 1 audio listener in the scene. So that's an error, because if you simulate the game, if there are 2 audio listeners, the engine won't know which one of those should hear all the sounds coming from the sources. And that happened because when we duplicated this camera, we got 2 audio listener. So go ahead and delete this audio listener from here, remove component, and now when you simulate your game, you will see that the warning we had is gone.